Welcome back to the Women's Empowerment Summit. I'm your host, Karen Martell. And for today's episode, you are going to want to grab a paper and pen, ladies, because the first time I listened to this guy, I was driving my car and started talking to myself, listening to him going, what? What did this guy just say? Holy shit. Okay. Push pause, get home, get the pad of paper out. And I literally took pages of notes because what this guy has to say is like nothing you've ever heard when it comes to law of attraction and creating the life that you want. This stuff is like the missing piece of the puzzle that everybody needs to hear. And this guy's name is Jim Fortin. So welcome, Jim Fortin.
Hey there. Thank you for the invite. I'm really excited to be here today with you and people that you serve.
Yes, I'm super excited because like I said, what you said on that podcast was, it was a business podcast. It was James Wedmore, Mind Your Business podcast. I listened to it to, improve my business. And listening to that episode that day, I have to tell you, it literally changed, I feel like, the trajectory of my life because I saw everything differently afterwards. So for people that don't know you, Jim, tell us, who you are. What do you do?
It's interesting what I hear, and I hear what you say a lot and on the interviews and from people. And that podcast was James Wedmore's #1 downloaded podcast of all time. And the next one did really well also. And so what's different about me, what I do, and the approach that I take is so many people take what I call the rah motivational approach. It's you can do it, you can win. I believe in you, believe in yourself. And my background is that I've been an NLP master practitioner in neuro-linguistic programming for 25 years. The lady who taught me was a business partner for a lot of years. She was also the person who started teaching Tony Robbins. I have a large background in like cognitive behavioral psychology, neurology, how the brain works, all this kind of stuff. But what actually I find, and my observation takes me beyond pretty much everyone else out there, is my sister's husband, my brother-in-law, is what's called a shaman. Shamans are healers. I've apprenticed with him for a lot of years, and he's done over 2 decades of literally moving me mentally and showing me ways to get in my own brain, move my own consciousness to work at a much higher level. So that's what I bring a little bit differently than everyone else.
Kind of mixing the science with the spirituality.
Yeah, I had somebody last week that actually said, and like I said, I'm not always, it just is what it is. But he said that in his observation that I was like the foremost person able to actually merge the East and West, the Western science and all that kind of stuff with the ancient Eastern tradition, which shamanism has been around 70,000 years. So I merge both to give people perspective. And then I bring the science part of it for those that need that. It helps them just integrate that at a more, or at a visceral or a cerebral level. Yeah. So that's my approach. And they'll see as we're going through this, as we start tying this all together.
Right. So what exactly would be, even if for somebody that hasn't even heard of subconscious beliefs, because I know when I even just first learned about limiting beliefs, which I think is kind of the same, it was a big aha moment for me to be like, oh, what? I have who knew I even had these? And that's why I think they're subconscious.
Okay, so let me actually draw a distinction there. I'm looking down and making notes as I go, so make sure we cover some very fundamental things for people that are watching later. Is you hear a lot of motivational speakers say things like, you've got to believe in yourself. Now, I used to be a platform speaker. I've spoken for 20 years plus years to audiences. And you'll see a platform speaker get up and say, okay, what we want to do is we want to create your goals for you. And we want, you got to believe you can have it. And then what we want you to do is, where do you want to be in a year? And people are trained to put all their little goals on paper. And then a year later, they look back and they've achieved none of their goals. Now, the reason why people have to get this is we analytically, consciously want to believe things. We believe we want to be healthy, we want to be fit, we want money. But we all work, which is all left brain analytical thought. Left-hand side of the brain is the analytical side of the brain. The right-hand side of the brain is a non-analytical side of the brain, and it's also seen in the unconscious mind. Now, we can say all day long that I believe I can make $1 million. Think and Grow Rich, the book. You've heard of the book. Everyone's heard of it. Why have so many people read it, but they're still not rich? And they'll read it 10 times and they're still not. Now, to take that back to your question, is research has demonstrated that up to 95% of our decisions are subconsciously made. I use the word subconsciously and unconsciously interchangeably, which means as human beings, we operate on unconscious autopilot without even knowing it. And this is also brain-based. Okay, long story, I'm winding it down here, but we can actually think all day long that we want to create something, health, wealth, get in great shape, make a lot of money, grow a business. But if we hold at an unconscious level an identity, which are adjectives about ourselves. If we hold, for example, let's say that we grew up poor, okay? And we learn that we hear our father saying, money's hard to come by, money's hard to come by. And that's locked in unconsciously. We operate from that paradigm, not even knowing that that paradigm is running like an app on our phone in the background. All of our apps run, but we don't know they're running, right? But that app is running in your background and you don't even know the app's running. That's why all the things that you try to do, which is what everyone tries to do, is they try to go do things. And what we have to look at is who do I have to be? And what characteristics am I demonstrating? And what is my identity? Because we will actually demonstrate our identity in our external environment. Let me just go a little further here.
Yeah, break that down.
Oprah Winfrey, one of the
Yes.
richest women and most influential women in the world. Now, we know that she can afford any trainer, any nutritionist, anything she wants, she can afford. But how come after all these attempts and over all the years to go to release weight, to go to a healthy weight, why is she still 100 pounds overweight?
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder that all the time. Yes.
So what do you
Okay.
think? What do you think based upon what we're talking about?
It's who she identifies with being, and that struggle is who she identifies with being.
Probably that's a good part of it. And secondly, I'm a hypnotist, and people don't know that hypnosis is endorsed by Harvard, Stanford, Yale, Columbia, the Mayo Clinic. Many years ago, they endorsed and they reversed their endorsement because of the way they endorse things, but even the AMA endorsed it. The American Psychological, American Psychiatric Associations all endorse the efficacy of hypnosis. Now, being a hypnotist for a lot of years, what I've discovered, and I was taught by my mentors, is that many times when women are raped, what they'll do is they'll put on excess weight as an unconscious metaphor for protection. So the excess weight is a metaphorical protection, isolation, or you know what, I'm overweight now, and women use the F word, I'm fat, and nobody's gonna want me now. Now, as you know, Oprah was, well, I don't know if you do know, Oprah was raped when she was like 14 or something, right?
Yeah.
Now, being a hypnotist, I would have to guess that at some level she built those psychological barriers unconsciously, but she doesn't know it because it's completely unconscious, and she carries that weight around her for isolation and protection, and that's never been addressed by a hypnotherapist or even herself at some point, and that's why the body continues to demonstrate that metaphor in her body and in her external environment.
Yes, I got it. Yeah. Yeah. Because even when I think about when I went through this myself after hearing you speak, I definitely started to see the whole mother father that grew up, my mom always would say those things, that money doesn't grow on trees. You have to, work hard for your money. I got to do this, you got to do that. And it actually became a survival for me, that like I related money to survival. And that was one of my aha moments of that's what I had to, obviously that's what I was producing in my life. And we won't get into those details, but that's who I identified with, was surviving financially, basically, for a long time. And I had to get over that part.
Well, yeah, I'm glad you did. And you're helping people that you are. But let me add something there, a metaphor. When I did my first NLP training back in, I guess, 1994 or so, we had to act out what's called a psychodrama. It is what it sounds like. You got to act out something. And I remember that mine is I had to actually, we were outside, amphitheater kind of place, and I had to actually go to the top of it and get a feather that somebody was holding for me. And I remember, now you have to just act this out, however you want to act it out. And I remember struggling all the way, part of my psychodrama, and my NLP trainer said, it's interesting that you could have literally just walked right up point A to point B and got the feather, but in your psychodrama, you struggled all the way there. Now, I'm going to bring this back to the audience. I grew up and my parents were all about, you have to struggle and you have to work really hard to get what you want. So I never identified that I had that belief. And the psychodrama was like, wow, I'm operating unconsciously. not even knowing I had that belief, then we call that a generalized behavior. Where else in my life am I demonstrating that very same concept that I have to struggle to get what I want? And most people work from, I have to work really hard or I have to struggle to get what I want. And that's exactly what they do because that's their paradigm. And that's how they live their life, their entire lifetime, not even recognizing that's nothing more than an unconscious filter.
So what's happening on a neurological system as well as the spiritual system when it comes to these subconscious beliefs? Because we have these neural pathways that we're running down,
Right.
constantly bringing us down the same pathway.
Yep.
And then there's also a spiritual side to it as well, energetically.
Okay. I don't understand your question. Now, when I say I don't, I mean, we'll put this together. But what specifically are you asking with that question?
So when somebody grows up with the belief, for instance, that money is hard, so every time they think of work or their finances, they go down that same neural pathway. And I just want our listeners to understand what's happening inside the brain, why it's so hard to change these beliefs or why they're so familiar and we don't even realize that they're there because of what's firing in the brain. And then the second part, what's happening energetically, like what is it that we're putting out there without even realizing it?
Got it. I kind of thought that's what you asked, but now
yeah, sorry, it's a deep question. So
let's go brain-based first, okay? Because we're biological organisms, all right? Now, there are three predominant parts of the brain. The prefrontal cortex, which is the thinking part of the brain up here. We have the mammalian brain, which is the middle part of the brain called the limbic system, responsible for emotions, or that's where the emotions are housed. Then we have what's called the reptilian part of the brain, which is the oldest part of the brain. It sits back here in the center of the brain, very low. That part of the brain was the first part of the brain that evolved in our species. Now, that part of the brain is where the amygdala is, which is where fear is. But that part of the brain is a fight or flight response part of the brain. And that part of the brain is responsible for our survival, keeping us alive, keeping our autonomic nervous system functioning so we can breathe and our hearts can beat and brain waves and everything else. Now, let's go to habituation and habits. When we learn as a kid that money's hard to come by, we hear it over and over, we habituate that thought process. Now, we create habits because it actually conserves energy. Let's say, for example, that every time you wanted to ride a bike, you had to relearn. Well, that'd be crazy, right? You'd have to relearn everything all the time. So the brain learns habits. Now, here's a big deal. There's a reptilian part of the brain. It's that part of the brain's job to actually keep us alive. So that part of the brain acts from the positioning that all of our habits are survival needed. So even if we're smoking a cigarette, somebody can say, oh my God, this habit is really, really, really hard to stop. Why do I smoke every day? And they will analytically, prefrontal cortex say you shouldn't do this, it's not good for you, but they can't break the habit. Why? Because that part of the brain believes, even though that we analytically think it's bad for us, that part of the brain believes that you need that for survival. And the reptilian part of the brain actually gives us cravings, which is an alarm clock to remind us to go into habit. Then what happens is we get into what I call a habit battle from prefrontal cortex, which is just analytical, to the reptilian brain, which gets into cravings and emotions and feelings. Now you've got two parts of the brain fighting, and that is smoke, don't smoke, smoke, don't smoke. And the emotional part of the brain with feelings and cravings will always win over the analytical part of the brain. That's why it's hard for people to break their habits, because they're actually, the brain's fighting itself as opposed to the person dialoguing with the reptilian brain and dismissing the habit.
See, that's huge. That's so huge, because that's all about willpower too, isn't it?
Well, actually the reverse of that. And let's go somewhere that actually, let's create a little controversy here with a little bit of science and rile some people up here in a second. People believe they've got to use their willpower. Willpower is a left brain analytical fixed resource that I'm going to do this and I'm going to make it happen. And then what they do is they fight themselves to make something happen. But here's the thing. And then the reptilian brain fights back and says, nope, you ain't going to do that. And it becomes the battle. And then what happens at the habit battle, like a battery on our cell phone, the more you use the cell phone, the more the battery goes down. So the more that you habit battle, the more that actually you wear yourself out. And then what you do is willpower is a fixed resource. Now you no longer have any willpower. Let me just keep on going here so they get this. Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg. You ever noticed he always wears the same thing every day? Have you noticed that? Do you know why?
No, I don't.
It's called decision fatigue. Is that he's like, and Obama said the same thing. Obama wore the same thing every day. He goes, I've got enough decisions to make that I don't want to use my brain to make unnecessary decisions because I need every bit of brain power that I have. So they alleviate their decision fatigue by actually not making those decisions. Somebody else, they've already made them, like Zuckerberg wears the same thing every day. I know I'm saying a lot, but let me keep on going here. Maria Shriver shot a program a couple of years ago, and I think it's called Paycheck to Paycheck. It's about 5 years old. And in this country, 40 million women live paycheck to paycheck. And have you ever seen women before that they've got 2 kids or a single mom, and you're like, why can't they get out of this cycle? You know, why are they so stuck? I mean, but the woman's working 2 jobs, and then so what she does, she's up at 5:30 in the morning, getting the kids ready. She takes them to school. She goes to work. She works, you know, till like 7 p.m., comes home, feeds the kids. Somebody's watching them. But here's what happens, and this is why they stay stuck in the cycle. It's brain-based. Is that let me pull my camera down here a little bit. They're working all day long, and as they're working all day long and thinking, they wear down the brain. So then what happens is they come home and they just collapse. The brain has no more energy left to be able to think, well, how can I get out of this situation? And that's why it becomes a cycle that every day just repeats over and over and over again, because they no longer have the willpower or the thought ability to figure out ways out of that circumstance. So in that instance, it's the brain actually creating that for them. And we still haven't finished answering your first question yet, but so let's habituate. Let's go back to the question. So one is a habituation, and then we just learn that. And then we don't even know it's habit anymore because your habits are completely unconscious. No one ever says, you know what, let me get into a habit today, right? It just happens automatically. So then what we do, and let's go to the other side of your question, the energetic side. For those that want a little science, we can talk ancient wisdom, and you can find ancient wisdom in the Bible, Torah, Kabbalah, the Quran, the I Ching. You can find it everywhere. And there's one book that I always refer to called the Kabbalion, Kybalion. No one knows how old it is, but they believe Hermes Trismegistus wrote it. They believe the manuscript is thousands of years old. It's 7 cosmic laws. Of the 7 cosmic laws, the first cosmic law is the universe is mental, meaning it's mind in the entire universe. Now, let's take that ancient wisdom, let's merge that with science. There's an experiment anyone can look up on YouTube called the double slit experiment. And basically, that's a real physics experiment. I mean, it's legit, okay? And what that experiment says, physicists watched, and I'm not going to get into the complexity of it, but they watched the physics experiment. And what they discovered is that the outcome of that physics experiment was influenced by the thoughts held by the observers of that experiment. Basically, what they're saying is that the physical world bends to our thoughts. Okay, so now let's take and finish the second part of the question you asked. One was brain-based, the other was spiritual. Let's talk energy. Everything is energy. E equals MC squared. We live in a world of consciousness and energy, not an opinion, a fact of physics. So now if I'm brain-based holding the belief, money's hard to come by, money's hard to come by, I am projecting that out into the universe. The universe corresponds and reflects us and says, okay, so Karen, if you say money's hard to come by, that's the experience I'm going to give you, is that money's hard to come by. And then what happens is you have that experience, and now you analyze it analytically and say, see, I told you money's hard to come by, and you've gotten into a brain-based, energetic, self-fulfilling prophecy.
Holy, that's right.
Water.
Yeah. So, okay, a piece of that is that it's going on to that survival part of the brain. These habits, like you said, like the smoking, even if it's a bad habit, our brain believes it's there for survival in some weird sense, right? Yes. Okay. Correct. And so when we try to stop a habit, is it telling our survival part of our brain that we are in danger?
Okay, so I'm making notes here so I cover your questions. Okay, here's the big mistake that everyone makes, all right? Let's say this in a couple of different ways. Number one is when you left brain say, analytically, I want to stop drinking Diet Coke, whatever, smoking, whatever it is, okay? Facebook 40 times a day, which by the way, Facebook and Instagram and all those companies are literally designed to actually give you a dopamine release in the brain to actually addict your brain to those websites so that they can sell ad revenue to more eyeballs, all brain-based. Here's what people do though. They say, I want to stop a bad habit, nail biting or whatever we talked about, Diet Coke, coffee, whatever it is. Now, what happens is they analytically say they're going to do it. And the reptilian brain says, nope, no, you're not. We need that. That's smoking cigarettes every day. We need that for survival. You ain't stopping anything. And that's when they habit battle. Well, I want to stop. And then what happens is the reptilian part of the brain actually gives us cravings, as I said earlier, to remind us to go into the habit. It's like an alarm clock. And let me be a little more repetitive, and then we'll go a different direction with it. Have you ever noticed before that you say things like, you know what, this Saturday, I've been saying it forever, I have to tackle that project, meaning I have to clean out the hallway closet, or I've got to do something that you analytically say you have to do. And it's going to be raining anyway because the weatherman said, so it's a perfect time to just stay in the house and clean up. Then you open your blinds Saturday morning and it's sunny out. And you start thinking, oh, all the things that I can do, I can go boating today, and I can go play tennis, or all these things, and the closet never gets cleaned. Why? Because the emotional mind will always trump the analytical mind, which is prefrontal cortex. So what people do is, when it comes to habits and beating the habit, what they do is they try to fight the habit by ignoring it. And it's a very important distinction I'm going to share here. Let me give you an example of my own that I've used before. Maybe I haven't used in James's podcast. Until I figured all this out. For many years ago, I used to drink Diet Coke, and that stuff's addictive. I don't know what they put in it, but it's addictive. Part of it's psychological, and I do believe part of it might have even been physiological. And I had a Diet Coke every day, and so I rationalized it and said, well, I don't drink coffee, so I need caffeine, and I start getting tired after lunch, I'll just have a Diet Coke. And I had one every day for probably 15 years. And then I tried to stop, but I couldn't, because I just was compelled. Because what would happen is the reptilian brain says, dude, that's a habit, and we need to give you the craving to reinforce the habit. And so what happens, in the same vein, smokers will say, smoking relaxes me. No, it doesn't. What happens is, when they want a cigarette, the brain keeps building that tension, the reptilian brain, smoke the cigarette, smoke the cigarette, smoke the cigarette. So when they finally give in and they smoke, then the brain says, okay, now you've satiated the craving from the reptilian brain. And people think that is the cigarette relaxing them, but the cigarette actually reduces the tension created by the brain wanting to execute a habit. Are you with me so far?
I am with you so far.
Okay, good. And hopefully everyone else is.
Yes.
What we do is we fight it. And that's the wrong way, because now you've got the habit battle, prefrontal thinking brain versus the reptilian brain, and it's a battle back and forth. So what we have to do is this, and this works very, very well and very quickly, is what most of us do is we try to ignore the habit. Like, I don't want to see it. I don't want to see any cookies. I don't want to see any donuts. I do not want to see any Diet Coke. All right. So we ignore. Now, if I say, don't think of a pink elephant, what are you thinking of?
A pink elephant.
Exactly. Okay. You have to, because the brain can't, the unconscious mind, or that part of the brain can't think in negatives, meaning you can't tell it. If I said, for example, don't forget, what I'm telling you is to forget. All right. Mm-hmm. We even use that as a hypnotist. I'll say, you know what, Karen, whatever you do, don't go into hypnosis too quickly. And that's literally a suggestion to go into hypnosis quickly. So what we have
So it's whatever's opposite, hey?
Exactly. People will say, don't let me forget. Or my boss many years ago really made Mothers Against Drunk Drivers mad, because over on your visor, it says, don't drink and drive. The brain filters out don't and reads drink and drive, literally. I mean, there are so many things in our culture that people are programmed and they don't even know they're being programmed. But let me finish, because people are like, Jim, finish the story. I want to know how to break the habit. But I'm going to make you guys wait one more minute, because I want to give you another example here. Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, this is it's going to fire some people up, but I'm talking science. Do you know what the success rate of Alcoholics Anonymous is?
Oh, it's very poor. I can't remember. It's very, very low. I remember hearing it once going, oh, that's not good.
Yeah, I've heard varying statistics, anywhere from 5% success rate to 50, but even 50, still 50% of people fail. The big mistake with AA, and this is brain-based, is, I'm looking for something for a metaphor here. This is at my desk. I'm visiting somebody. But they'll say, okay, you've got two options. In this hand, you can drink. In this hand, you can never drink. And then what happens is the brain goes, drink, don't drink, drink, don't drink, like the cookies or donuts or Diet Coke. Then what happens is they start thinking about how good it is to drink, and that's emotional, and it always wins out over the not drinking, hence the failure rate. Now,
Jim, can you give an example also of a behavior, not just a physical addiction, but more like the addiction of money's hard to come by or something like that, where it's more of a behavior, a thought belief system, a thought.
Make a note, remind me. Let me just wrap this up so
Okay. Yeah,
we can tie it to that as well. Okay. Is because habit thinking is addiction. If you see somebody or habit can be a habit addiction. If you see somebody and every time you see that person, you get mad, that's nothing more than habit. It's called a trigger and an anchor also. Okay. But let me wrap up this one part and we'll take it back to that. Is ignoring. People try to ignore the alcohol by stay sober or no donut. They try to ignore this. This is, I can't see it. This is not there. And the more you ignore, the louder it gets. Now here's the key, everyone. Here's the pivotal key is when you try to ignore a habit you're trying to break, the habit will get stronger. When you dismiss, here's the operative word, dismiss the habit, what will happen is this. For example, I'm going to use a metaphor here. I'm sitting in this chair. Ignoring you is like, I don't want to look at you. I can see you over here. I don't want to talk about it. Dismissing is literally this, getting up, and I'm not even part of it anymore, and I walk out the door metaphorically speaking. That's the difference between dismissing and ignoring. So what we have to do is what I did is I taught people, and people can download, I don't know if I have this one downloadable, but here's a dialogue that I use, because what I do is I left brain analytical dialogue with my reptilian brain. And here's what I do. You guys might want to write this down. Any habit you want to break, because the habit will leave in about 24 hours when you start dismissing. What I will say is, mine was Diet Coke. Ugh, I have a craving for Diet Coke. That's where most people collapse. I need to go get one. What I said next was, and this is pivotal, this is not me, it is my reptilian brain trying to execute a habit. Now I have disassociated me, Jim, from a brain-based habit. Because what everyone does is they personalize their habit. And they'll say, I can't stop eating donuts. I can't stop drinking Diet Coke, and there's water or something in that. And what they do is they personalize and they make it them. And then they say things like, I have no willpower. I'm weak. I fail every time. I just can't do that, which is what I call habit voice. But when you dismiss, and this is what I did. So I said, okay, I've got the urge for a Diet Coke. Wait, that's not me. That is my reptilian brain trying to execute a habit for me. And then what I said, here's the dismissing part. Diet Coke is no longer for me. Literally what I said, Diet Coke is no longer for me. And then step number 4 is I dismiss completely. I dismiss. Well, that's step number 3, and 4 are kind of the same. And then what I call move my attention, because you are where your attention is. So think about that. Your attention is, let's say, for example, you're thinking about something. You're all thinking about a launch or business or money or whatever, and you're almost in a car accident. And then you're like, oh, you're like focused on the car accident, and you're not even thinking about what you were thinking about because your attention is in a different place. Now, here's a pivotal, very simple takeaway. So simple that it's stupid simple. But when you move your attention, you're no longer thinking about Diet Coke or the cravings, right? Are you with me?
Yes, I'm with you.
Okay. Do you like sushi?
Yes.
Did you want sushi prior to me asking you that question? Did you want sushi?
No.
Do you know why you didn't want sushi prior to me asking that question?
Because my attention wasn't on it.
Exactly. You weren't thinking about it. Exactly. Here's a big takeaway. Huge. And like I said, stupid simple is you can't want what you're not thinking about. So yeah. That's how we break the habit. Because what people do is, I want a Diet Coke. Now I'm going to think about it and think about it and think about it. And then I'm going to say, no, I don't want it, don't want it. Well, what am I thinking about? Diet Coke. Now, where's my attention? And then the emotion's going to kick in, the brain's going to kick in, and then it's going to make me acquiesce and say, you know what? I give in every time anyway. Why not just have the Diet Coke? And then the analytical brain says, see, I told you you couldn't beat Diet Coke anyway. Now you're just back in your old patterns again. So that's what you do. When you have the habit, you'll get the feeling and the craving, that's the brain. You acknowledge it. Right now, I'm having a craving for donuts or Diet Coke. Then you go into, this is critical. It's not me. It's my reptilian brain trying to perpetuate a habit and phrase it any way you want, but you have to say, it's not me, it's my reptilian brain. Now you're disassociating. And then you actually dismiss, and then you move your attention. And when you move your attention, I'm telling you guys, I mean, I drank Diet Coke, that crap, for like 15 years. And I thought that I was addicted to Diet Coke. And it was hard. And when I learned, and I did what I just showed you, within one day, this has probably been, I don't know, a few years back, 3 or 4 years ago, I have never touched one nor wanted one since that day. Because what happens is when you tell the brain, we're telling brains like a kid, I want candy, I want candy, I want candy. When it learns it's not going to get the candy, it no longer actually gives you the urge to have candy, because it's like, every time I tell him to have a Diet Coke, he dismisses it. So what's the point of even giving him the urge anymore? And that brain, shockingly, that part of the brain and that habit will die down literally at about 24 hours. I know we went a long about way, but people apply that right there, that'll change their life.
Well, totally. I work in weight loss and nutrition. So just a couple hours ago, I had a woman ask, as I always get asked, what about a cheat day? When do I get to have the cheat day? And when should I be calorie counting? Because I'm, and should I be carb counting? And should I be doing this? And I'm like, heck no, you put all of those things in there. And that's exactly what you're talking about. It's that trying to use willpower, trying to use that brain part of saying, no, I don't want to, I won't eat the donut today. And then, because it's not my cheat day. And then of course, as soon as you try and stop yourself, of course you're going to want it, and then you fail. And so I had to try to explain that to my clients. I try and explain all the time to people that there should never be such a thing as cheat day. Like, just the energy around that period is doing that to your brain, because it's bad and you shouldn't be doing it. And you have to resist these things that are your cheat day or your cheats. It doesn't work.
Let me add for all the people in your audience that applies to, is many years ago when I was young, in my 20s, I used to work out 5 days a week. I mean, I was like the religious in the gym 5 days a week. I'm in my 50s now. I'm not that same person anymore, but I would literally I was religious about the gym. There was a guy, I used to go in the afternoon about 4 o'clock, a guy working out that was like an amazing shape. And I'm like, I want to be in shape like that guy. I thought he was a trainer. And I started talking to him one day because I wanted to hire him as my trainer. And he said no, because I'm a pharmaceutical sales rep. And something he said to me, I've always remembered. He said, you know what? I take clients out to dinner and we all go to steak dinners and they have the steaks and the mashed potatoes. And he goes, but I always have chicken breast and water and rice and veggies. And he said something to me that I carry with me 25 years later, is he said, that is who I am. Now let's go to identity, okay? Big deal here. So his identity, unlike Oprah's identity, I'll tell you Oprah's identity is I'm a person who can't lose weight. Mm-hmm. I'm overweight all my entire life. I'm a person who can't lose it. So no matter what she tries to do, it doesn't work, because that's affected by who she's being at an internal and conscious level. Now this guy, his identity was, I am lean and fit, and that's what I do. We have to go somewhere else here, is that people always try to do things to change their behavior. They're working at the wrong end of the equation. All right. I need to show you guys something here. I need to take 10 seconds to write this out. But you know that when people want to lose weight 9 times out of 10, what do?
They try to stop eating the food that they're not supposed to be eating, and they go on a diet. And
yeah, those are all okay. So what they do is they say, I'm almost done here, guys. What they do is they say, I want to lose some weight. BELIEFS. I want to lose some weight because I want to fit my bikini summers rolling around, right? So this is classic. What they will do is they will say, you know what? I'm going to actually go through the kitchen. IDENTITY. They're going to go through the kitchen and they're going to say, I'm going to binge this weekend, and then Sunday I'm going to throw all the food out, right?
Yep.
And then I'm going to be good, right? And then they say, Monday I'm feeling pretty good today. I'm starting my life over again. And then Tuesday, they're like, I'm on my diet today. Wednesday, they're like, kind of would like maybe like I'm at lunch and I want a Dorito, but I'll be okay. Thursday, they're like, oh, we're at lunch. I was good all week. I can have one nacho. And then Friday, they're like, I've been good the last 4 days. I can have a burger today. Monday, they're right back to where?
Right where they started. Yep.
Okay. So what I want to show you here, I don't know if this is going to be reversed, but people work backwards. They want to change their environment, which is up here, which means their body. They want to change their money, their body, whatever it is. So what people try to do is they try to change their behavior, thinking that if I change my behavior, then my body's going to change, my money's going to change. If I change my behavior, I'm going to prospect, I'm going to lead generate, I'm going to build my business, I'm going to work out, and then I'll get the environment I want, that's the body. This is where everyone starts.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah,
Wrong place
definitely.
to start.
With everything.
Is a reflection of identity all the way down here. Because see, they're overweight up here already in their behavior because they identify as an overweight person. Are you with me so far? And because they have this identity, that creates the behaviors of being an overweight person in the environment, and they want to change this by changing their behavior, but the behavior is still driven by what's called a deeper level. It's called a logical level here. Their behavior is still their behavior is still driven by their identity. So let me give you some components of this. If a person is in their environment, let's say they're 50 pounds overweight, we would have to say that maybe they tried to diet several times and they failed, or gym or whatever it is, right? Okay. So when it comes to their identity, how do they identify, let's say, as with commitment or self-discipline or focus or determination, right? So they don't have any of these things at the identity level. Therefore, they can't sustain the behavior to create the body that they want. So they start here, and New Year's resolutions, January the 1st, are all in a gym. 3 weeks later, because they've tried to change their behavior, but not their identity, being a fit person and having the commitment and self-integrity. So being as they never change this here is only fleeting and lasts a week, a couple of weeks at most, and then they're back in their old patterns again.
That is what not every single person, but majority of people, 99% of the time, I would say, are doing this. This is where people are stemming from when people are trying to change their life, whether it's their body, their money, their relationship, that is the exact breakdown of where people go to.
Now, and let's go to, I'm not going to mention any names here, but let's go to social media and social media personalities. There's somebody out there that tells people you have to work until your eyeballs bleed. You got to work and you got to do. But what no one ever looks at is who is the person, who is the being doing the doing. So you can go do all day long, and you see a lot of people trying to build their businesses, and they're working really hard and they're still not making any money, right? So you have to look at what one of my coaches taught me is that the doing is only as effective as the being doing the doing. So whatever you do in a gym, let's take it back here. Let's say I'm going to do, and I'm going to work hard in the gym, but that working hard in the gym is only as effective as the characteristics of the being of that person. And if my characteristics are, which I've habituated, that I can't stay committed to anything, well, then that characteristic is going to filter into the doing, and therefore I'm no longer going to do the doing, and I'm going to fall off track. Everyone, all of us, when you say we say everyone, 99.9% of people start at the wrong place in the performance equation, and that's why they fail. And this is culturally pervasive because everybody teaches, I'm just going to say it, and he's a really tall guy, big speaker, everybody knows who he is, and he says, and he's had great success, and I want him to have even more success, but he says, you got to take massive action. Well, the problem with that is that if you're not a person who can stay committed, and most people can't because we live in an instant society this day and age, it doesn't matter how much you think, oh, I have to take massive action. You can't because you're not the kind of person to take massive action. We work from the inside out, not the outside in. But everyone tries to start from the outside in. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. So it's about it. Can I interchange the word identity with your story? Is that, when people have their story, is that their identity?
Yes and no.
Mm-hmm.
Story actually is, I used to have in here because we go from environment. This was created back in the 50s by a guy named Gregory Bateson, social psychologist. We go from environment, which means your bank account, your external world, to behavior, because your behavior creates the environment. We go from skills, because what are you capable of? What things are you capable of doing with behavior? We go from beliefs, because you can only do things that you believe you can do, and we go to identity. Stories actually don't come in at the identity level. They come in as a reflection of the identity. And this is a great question you're asking. We can get some mileage out of this. Is that people don't recognize that their entire life is nothing more than a story.
Yeah.
Let's let that soak in for a second. Whether you, like Henry Ford used to say, the old marketing hyperbole is that if you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can't. Right? But we tell ourselves. So what happens is we create the identity. For example, you create the identity of money's hard to come by. You learn that from your parents, okay? Then what happens is you talk to yourself, which is your story about the identity, and it reinforces the identity. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yep.
Okay. I had a woman years ago come to me for weight loss when I was a hypnotherapist. And I said, let me guess, you've been overweight a lot of years. And she said, yep, everybody in my family is overweight. I said, tell me about that. And she said, well, I'm Italian, and that's what we do is we eat a story, right? And I said, let me ask you this. How many times have you tried to lose weight? And she goes, God, I've been on every diet in the world. And I said, okay, so what is your story about that? And she goes, well, everything I try doesn't work. Notice how she's already working. There are other places that I went with it. But notice how her contextual, which means a core level story, is that I try everything and nothing works. So it doesn't matter what she tries later, it's still not going to work, because that story at a core level is that things aren't going to work for me. But another story that I'll have is I'll try to keep doing things and maybe something eventually will work. People don't get that story is vital, because your life is a reflection of your stories. And if you want a different life, you've got to pick different stories. It applies to all of us. Me, I'm no different. It applies to every single one of us. So be careful of the stories that you pick, because you'll live by that story.
Yeah, the stories that you pick. I like that.
And stories are interpretations. And I use this in my training, so I'll just tell you guys. No offense meant to anyone, and I don't think there's anything offensive. It's just historical. Martin Luther King had a story about who deserved what in the world, right? And that moved millions of people. His story was all people are created equal. That was his story, and millions of people bought into that story. Other stories, Hitler had stories also about what people were, right? And millions of people bought into that story. We have cultural stories. We have personal stories. And I'm going to tell every one of you right now, if you don't have what you want, and that's completely subjective. We all want different things. I personally, I don't want to be a speaker on the road 5 days a week. I have zero desire for that at this point in my life. Other people are like, yeah, I want to be the big speaker. That's their story. This is my story. My story is I'd rather actually talk to people like this once or twice a week, sit on the back porch and drink a glass of wine, you know? But whatever stories you hold, whatever money you have in your bank account, or whatever your waist size is, or what your relationships are all a direct reflection of your identity and the stories you tell yourself about that identity. Now, here's the kicker. You ready for the kicker?
I'm ready for the kicker.
It's all shit made up in our mind.
Yeah, so to say, what about when somebody will, I'm sure people are thinking in their head right now, yeah, but my story's true. Like, oh, I don't come from money, or I am overweight. So changing my story isn't going to make me suddenly a thin person. So
I heard something, okay, and notice they're telling themselves a story about stories.
Right, yes.
Right? I heard something, it's a mind bender many years ago, is that there are no true beliefs. So I'll let that mind bend some people for a bit. But here's the thing, is the only thing that is true in our life is that which we make true in our life. Let me give you another example here, guys, to prove this. There are some people that would give their life for a belief, and their belief is Jesus Christ is my Lord and my Savior. That is a story. And there are other people that will say, that's not true at all. That's not true at all, because I'm Jewish or non-religious or no religion or agnostic or atheist. That story is a bunch of nonsense. Or any story. But see, notice the story is real to the person holding the story, which is subjective, but there's very few, and those are interpretations, there are very few facts in the world, literally. But people live their stories as if their stories are facts, and their stories are not facts. Their stories are stories that they want to believe, which gives them some ego advantage in the world, which for people is security or some kind of social status or dominance or whatever. But I think you're getting it, and I hope other people are getting it, is that your life pretty much is 99.999% made up in your head. It's a nonsensical story most of the time.
Yeah. And because we're not our thoughts, are we, Jim?
We're the thinker of our thoughts. Right. We're not people, and I use this before is people will say, I'm mad. No, you're not. You're a human being having mad thoughts. Or I'm sad. No, you're not sad or even happy. You are a human being processing sad or happy thoughts. And that's where we ought to go there really quickly. I wrote that down to the note. I call it the master thought formula. You can download this entire training over my website. It's about 90 minutes. It's very comprehensive about how people think their lives and they think they are their thoughts. And they don't recognize that they are actually the being thinking the thought. So what we do is we get into a thought of, I call it a horizontal thought, is we don't have any money, don't have any money, don't have any money, don't have any money. And that thought becomes then their reality, and it filters into every other aspect of their life. No one ever says, whoa, wait, I'm not my thoughts. I am the thinker of that thought. It's a bit Buddhism. Buddha used to say, observe your thoughts. So I'm not that thought. I am the thinker of that thought. Now here comes the power. When you're the thinker of the thought, you then recognize that you can choose any thought that you want. But what people do is they get caught in the thought, and women get caught in what I call the F thought, the F word. I'm so fat, I'm so fat, I'm so fat. Actually, you're the thinker of that. And many times it can also be completely subjective, because a woman can be 5 pounds overweight and say she's so fat. And that's the same thing. Another woman that's 100 pounds. I've seen women that are 100 pounds overweight going, I love my body. And it's just nonsensical. Mm-hmm. But you guys have, everyone watching or listening, you have to get that you're never stuck in life, ever. You're never, ever stuck. You're never stuck in life. You're stuck in your perceptions and your interpretations. Let me give you one more thing here, and we can go wherever you want, is people think they are a prisoner of their circumstances, meaning I don't have any money, so I can't do anything else. You're never a prisoner of your circumstances, but you can be a prisoner of your interpretations, because that's what keeps people trapped, is the interpretation. Because two people can look at the same thing, and one can say, there's just no way we can get through that. The other person is like, no big deal. Nothing more than interpretations. Crazy, isn't it crazy how trapped we stay as beings? It's almost ludicrous.
It is ludicrous. And once you get that piece that Jim's talking about, like I said, it's life-changing, because you can't look at things the same way. And you also have to take responsibility now for your life, because now if you're sitting there going, oh, geez, I'm broke, or I'm this, or I'm that, you have to say, well, change your perception. I'm practicing this on a daily basis right now of, these circumstances that might come up when I would normally have been like, oh, that sucks, or I hate that scenario, or I hate when my kids do that, or my husband does this, or my job is like that. Now I can just choose a different thought about it. And it's that simple.
Let me add there. Let me take us one step further to help everyone. As I tell people, which I learned from one of my coaches years ago, is anytime, number one, you're never stuck, ever. It's your interpretation that you're stuck. But my coach taught me, what are 7 new interpretations that I can make? Now, the reason she did that is because let's say that something's going on in your life, and you're like, I can't do something because of blank. Okay, that's a thought you have about that. But when I say, what are 7 new interpretations, you can usually give me, I could say, tell me some other things that it can mean. You can usually give me 1, 2, or 3. But after that, it becomes hard to find new meanings, new interpretations, because the first 1, 2, or 3 are still in your comfort zone and in your world of familiarity. But when you've got to come up with 4, 5, and 6, now you are forced to think in new ways that you haven't thought before, and you are forced to think new interpretations that you've never considered before. So when you find yourself stuck, what you do is you just start saying, what can this mean? What can this mean? What new meaning can I give this? What new way can I interpret it? And you just like corn husk, you just keep pulling it back and pulling it back. And very quickly you'll find, the corn on the inside, but you just keep shucking away and giving yourself more interpretations until you find one that, you know what, this interpretation can serve me. And that's where you work from. Now, the part of the brain might be saying, nope, we're not going to go there. And you just keep bringing your attention back to that as to where you want to work from. Now you're actually managing your brain instead of your brain managing you.
And you are then putting out a different energy. So let's talk about the law of attraction there. So now we're changing, you change your perception, which then immediately changes how you feel about a circumstance for the better, because we're trying to choose better thoughts. Energy is going to be going out that's better, which means that's what you'll be attracting.
Let me help them again.
Key.
Yes, absolutely. Let me draw a very subtle distinction here that when people get it, it'll change their lives. Is thinking is left brain, feeling is right. Okay. Now we live in a universe, obviously, of everything is energy. You have an EEG, you have an EKG. We are bioelectromagnetic beings. That's why when somebody has a heart attack, they shock them. I mean, why would they shock a bag of skin? Because the body's bioelectromagnetic, right? Okay. Now, it's everywhere from quantum physics, as I told you about, the double slit experiment, to the Kabbalion, which is the manuscript is thousands of years old, about everything is mental. Now, in the Kabbalion, the 7 cosmic laws, another cosmic law is that everything vibrates in the universe, which is also quantum physics, okay? So whatever thought that you have, that is an electromagnetic vibration. Here's the fatal mistake when it comes to manifestation that people make is they think about what they want to create as opposed to feeling what they want to create. We don't attract by our thinking. So the book Think and Grow Rich is an inaccurate title. It should be Feel and Grow Rich, because we don't attract what we think. Look at everything everybody's been thinking. We attract what we feel. So if you want to, one of my clients, his company, he grew up poor. His company did about, I don't know, $70, $100 million this year. They're growing pretty quickly. And he's been a client for years. I mentored him, and he came to Dallas to visit. And we were talking about the new Mercedes that he bought. He bought a $150,000 Mercedes. And I said, and I caught myself when I asked. I said, you could have bought a $100,000 car and then taken that $50,000 and put a kid through college. And then I said, what caused you to buy the $150,000 car? And I stopped myself before it got out of my mouth. And he goes, because I grew up poor and I feel rich in that car. So you know what? The more that I feel rich, the more wealth that I attract. That was last year. This year, he went and bought an Aston Martin for $50,000. And he gets it. He gets it. And I've gotten it over time because I grew up poor. And I used to always feel poor. I'd look at my bank account, and then what it would do would make me feel bad. And because it made me feel bad, the universe would say, well, you know what? You feel bad because you don't have money. That's your vibration. So we're going to give you, because the universe reflects us, we're going to actually give you no money. And then I feel bad because I have no money, and the universe gives me more of what I'm feeling. Guys, you have to get this. People, this is the hardest leap for most people to make. Mm-hmm. Hardest times 100, and it's the simplest, is that the universe doesn't test you. Life doesn't challenge you. It reflects you. And whatever you don't have, I tell myself, whatever I don't have out here, it's because I don't have it in here first. So I know that I have to hold the vibration of what it feels like to be wealthy. I have to hold that to attract that. And it's not thinking, it's feeling. Feeling is the glue in the universe, not the thinking. And whatever you want, you have to feel. And the pivotal thing here is this, and it's in the Bible and different other works. You do not feel as if you want it. Here's like the pivot. You don't feel like you want it. You feel as if you already have it. I think somewhere in the Bible it says, pray as if it's already done. That's the whole purpose there. You feel it. You feel the money as if you already have the money. Now, that's the message you're putting out in the universe. The universe says you already got it. Boom, we'll just keep bringing you more of it. Very subtle. And that is, I mean, like I said, that is what I call the razor's edge. It is that simple, but most people have a very, very hard time making that shift because they live by their external world, their circumstances. And they say, my bank account is not what I want it to be. I'm going to feel bad about that. They're letting something outside of themselves, external, affect how they feel internally. And because now they feel that way internally, they attract more of what's on the outside of them. Make sense?
Yep, absolutely. So, and do you find too, because I've been doing this for years, I've known about that practice for years, and I definitely know that you get the concept, you start, okay, I'm going to start to feel what it feels like, and you start to imagine, and you're grateful for the things that are around you, so that you're starting to raise that vibration. And like so many things, you can go for a period of time in this, positive I'll give you a great example. I listened to your podcast there last fall. I started to put all this stuff into practice, and I did it for a couple months, and I had like the best financial months I've had in my whole business for 4 years. Everything was going great. And then it was like, I got really busy and I forgot. And I think that this is something that happens often to people, is they get all gung ho and it works for 30 days, or they're doing it for 30 days. And they start to revert back to the old habits.
Brain.
So any advice for that, Jim?
Yeah, that's great you bring that up. It shows you how complex this can be and how simple is. Let's say, for example, that, and we get into habits, which you opened up that loop earlier, like when a habit of feeling bad. People get into habits not even knowing their habits of thinking and feeling. So I feel bad today. My brother-in-law is a shaman that I've worked with for over 20 years. And we were traveling one time, and there's somebody that worked with him. And he says, this is about 2 or 3 years ago. And he says, you're angry. She's like, no, I'm not angry. And he goes, no, you're angry all the time. But you've been angry so much in your life, it's a habit that you don't even know that you're angry. Now, let's take this to your question. Is we only do what we're in the habit of doing. That's a premise. We only do, think about that. We only do what we're in the habit of doing. If we don't do something, it's because we're not in the habit of doing it. So then we do what you did. We raise everything up, but it doesn't really become a habit. We don't like consistently keep our attention there. So the brain pulls us all the way backwards again, back to the old habits. And we're like, shit, what happened? Yeah. And then I'm like, well, all the things that I was doing, what happened? That's your brain. We have to learn to habituate our behaviors. We literally are extremely inconsistent creatures. And this is what I tell people. There was a video circulating. I didn't watch it on Facebook, but it was by an admiral. And he said, one of the most powerful things you can do, I think, is make your bed every day. What he's talking about, I didn't watch the whole video, is habituation. You habituate the ways of being that you want to be, and you habituate it every time. So then I want to help people here. Is we are very, very, there was some research done, and I think they said that goldfish have the attention span of 8 seconds, and humans now come in at 7 seconds. We have no attention span. Crazy.
That's terrible. Yeah.
Well, we live in a world where we're just bombarded with social media and everything around us in our world. We live in what I call the attention deficit age. So what happens is we actually can't stay committed to anything. Look at people who follow you. People can't stay committed. Why? Because they haven't habituated commitment. So what they do, as I tell people, is get a habit app. There's many called like Streaks and Habit List, I believe. You can just find them on your phone and take one thing that you want. And I tell people that you want to teach yourself how to stay committed and how to actually create habits, because most people can't do it. We create our habits unconsciously and just arbitrarily. But let's say, for example, that you want to, I'm looking for something, there's nothing here on the desk, but you want to, I'm visiting a friend. So let's say that you want to learn how to create habits. Is you get Habit List or any of these habit apps, and every day you do a habit. And then it'll remind you to do a habit. And you do it every day, and then we learn habit just through repetition. And you teach yourself how to get into a new habit of something, and that can be with thinking or with behavior. But I know if you rely on your own faculties, like, well, I'm going to create a new habit, you'll forget 2 days later. It's what we do. So use technology. I mean, use your phone, use Habit List, use Streaks. There's also a habit app. It's called Commit to 3. It's free. Or it's Commit to 3. It's free. And it has you pick, and this is really smart. It has you pick 3 small habits that you want to, very, very small things that you want to do on a daily basis. Now, keep it really simple. I don't mean like cleaning out the garage every day or something big, but literally one habit could be just make my bed every morning. Another habit could be take all the dishes out of the sink every morning, something, but keep it really, really simple so that it's like not a challenge to do it. And this habit app teaches you how to learn how to create new habits. That's all, we started this, that's what everything is. It's just your stories are a habit. Your self-talk is a habit. It's all habit. And I even have a habit program on my website. It's a lengthy one. And one of the first things that I say is don't focus on what you believe. Don't focus on what you think. Focus, because we don't get those things. That's why people will say, oh, I'm gonna write down my goals and throw this out the window 2 weeks later. We don't get what we want. We get our unconscious habits because we do them over and over and over, not even knowing we're doing it because they're a habit. So you want to change your life, you focus on the minor unconscious habits that will make a difference in your life, and you'll see significant change in your life.
Perfect. I love it. And so just one last question that I just out of curiosity, because I consider myself a spiritual person. I've worked with my own shamans and I'm very intuitive. And how, just your opinion, just your personal opinion, because I know you don't know the answer to this. How much of life is fate and how much of it is what we're creating?
I think we come here with the mold. For example, Mother Teresa didn't come here to be a real estate millionaire. I believe we all come here with our Dharma. And then we have free will. And what you do in that Dharma is entirely up to you. I'm living my Dharma. I do what I do. My Dharma, though, actually, if I had to leave everything like this podcast I've just been on, that's what I do in the context of my Dharma. But my Dharma, my brother-in-law, a shaman, he's not a garden variety shaman. He'd be like a major shaman you would find in the Amazon or something. He learned in Mexico and he started when he was 6 years old. We've been inside the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid doing ceremonies. We've been inside Teotihuacan. We've been inside Palenque. We've been inside Machu Picchu. We've been inside Uluru. These are all power vortexes on the planet. My Dharma is what I do energetically. Everything else is me being out in the world. That plays into the pattern of my Dharma. But if I was told, live the rest of your life in solitude and work on the spiritual energetic path because we create things with our mind, that would be my Dharma. That's why I'm here this lifetime. That's my primary Dharma. So we come with the Dharma, but what we do inside of that is entirely a matter of our free will. And we can live the Dharma, or we can actually leave and come back and have to work on it some more. A large part of life, and I don't know, is probably determined based upon that Dharma. But what you do with it is entirely up to you. And I do know we have free will. Even though science says that the brain makes all of our decisions for us. But what they discovered, and some people run with that and say, oh, we have no free will. No, what they don't tell you is that experiment, which was done at the Max Planck Institute, says that our brain makes all of our decisions for us. We don't even know it's happening. And that's why people say, oh, I told you we don't have any free will. But what they discovered is in the last couple, and they say our brain makes our decisions for us 7 seconds before we actually act. But what they've discovered is that in the couple of seconds prior to acting, we have the conscious reflective ability to reevaluate that brain habit. Meaning, do I really want to get into this or not? Even though the brain's saying doing it, do I want to get into this? Which again is demonstration of free will. And then what they never talk about is that habit that I have, I created that from some free will at some point prior to habituate for it to become a habit. Therefore, it's free will that created the habit. Big answer at all.
That was, yes.
And then the final comment is, I wrote here today, I'm creating another program. Is the easiest way to get through life? Stop thinking. Because then we can access higher function of the mind and our sense, which is, they call it the sixth sense. We can access higher function of the mind once we shut down an analytical brain. But people try to think their way through lives, analyze. And let me create a false premise that I'm going to work from. Now I'm going to live the rest of my life on this false premise. And that false premise can be, this life is hard to change. And then they work from that false premise their entire lifetime. When you can change like that, you do it all the time. You can turn your chair around in a circle if you wanted. You're changing, right? You just decided to do it. That's using your mind. You can change anything at any given second.
Yep, I agree. So if people are ready to drink your Kool-Aid, Jim, where are they finding you at and what can they get from you? You've got a couple different programs going on. You've got a new one that I know you've run once and it's opened again right now. How often, tell us about that one and how often are you opening that?
Okay, we've got a transformational coaching, which is group coaching. It's 100 people in the program. Right now we're about 70% full. We'll close on Tuesday. It's a group program that I lead. It's live interaction with me. There's homework every single week. It's basically helping you just shuck everything back like the corn husk. actually helping you master, like, what are your stories? What is your self-identity? What are your interpretations? What's your self-integrity? How do you make your choices? What are your unconscious drivers? What's your level of personal responsibility? How do you make interpretations? It's basically, I call it my transformational coaching program. We start that next week. We don't have a page on that, I believe, because we didn't promote it because it filled up for my own tribe for the most part. But if you're interested in that, email my project manager, Nikki, Nikki, at jimfortin.com. Nikki, Nikki, at jimfortin. She can send you details. Actually, no, wait. We have a training video. Actually, I just put up a training video. Email Nikki, and she can send you an entire training video, which goes much deeper than, it's all training. It's not sales. That it'll go much deeper than what we've done here. I do have another website called the Sales Psychology Academy. It's my monthly membership site. Even though it says Sales Psychology Academy, I work with entrepreneurs. We all sell for a living. I mean, you got to sell your people to want to listen to you, right?
Yep.
There's a lot of content on that site. It's all video. And about 70% is sales, persuasion, influence, how to get into people's minds, how to create webinars, all this stuff that basically is sales and business based. And 30% is, there's an entire program on there on how to reprogram your subconscious mind. There's a program on there on identity. There's a program in there on how to actually break habits without using willpower, and a lot of other content like that on that website. Then there's also jimfortin.com, and at the top it says free training, and I think there's probably 6 or 7 different podcasts that I've done. They're all along this vein, but a little different. The Jim Wedmore podcast is there, and there's probably a good 10 hours of content there that's all free as well. So those are the 3 ways to go to the next level, and it depends upon where people are. To give you an example of my coaching, and then we can go here, is that I just enrolled 131 people in the group coaching that we started back, that you knew about, which sold out like in 9 minutes. Of the 131 people, right now, 60 have re-enrolled to do it again, not because they didn't get it, but because they want to stay immersed. 65 as of this morning have re-enrolled again because they want to go back to the program again. So my whole thing is not rah-rah, not motivation. It's like, how can I immerse you in a process to create change that you want to create in your life? So those 3 programs. Yeah. And even, jimfortin.com, lots of information there. But if you're interested in the transformational program, we closed it on Tuesday. Nikki, Nikki, at jimfortin.com. Just ask her for the video we just shot for that program. She'll send you a free training, which we go even deeper than what we went here. And then it lays out the offer, the investment, all that kind of good stuff.
Right on. Because I think this is going to air after that closes, but I do believe, because I looked before, there is a button that you can click to get on the wait list for the next one.
Oh, is there? Okay.
Yes, there is.
Yeah, I'm taking the summer a little slow. I'm going to do just 1 this summer, and then in the fall, I'm looking to do 3 concurrently, 3 very large ones. So I'm building an entire foundation right now to help more people, because the way that I work is I work with a lot of people like you. And the more people that I can help, the more people they help, and it creates a ripple effect and makes a lot better world for all of us.
Oh, definitely. This has changed my business and my coaching business for sure. It's where I'm definitely working from with everybody that I see now, because like we talked about, eating and weight loss and all of those things have so much to do with these beliefs and these stories that you tell yourself. So thank you, Jim. It was amazing. And I so appreciate your time. And I know that everybody else on this summit does as well that is listening. So thank you so much. And remember, it's jimfortin.com, and I'll put the link underneath the show notes. But thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Karen. I really, really appreciate it. Stay well. Enjoy your weekend. I'll talk to you later, okay?